do we start these things again? Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is Living La Vita Loca, and my name is Faz.
And I'm Rich.
And we haven't done this for 2 weeks, so we've completely forgotten what we do now. And because we were so in control in the first place, it was
always had a good handle on it.
It was a tight knit operation, and now it's not even a knit operation.
Barely even a sweater.
Don't need it in this weather.
No, true.
You're looking like very tropical over there.
Thank you.
Is that cotton?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's something like that.
Rich is sporting a very lovely cotton Hawaiian shirt right now that I'm digging big time.
Post holiday come down.
Yeah.
Antidote.
How was your time away?
It was good. We came a little bit unstuck because we were meant to go to Cologne for a couple of days as part of it, and we were getting ready to go to the Eurostar station to do the sort of first bit of the trip, and got told about a load of train strikes in Germany. So about an hour before we get on the first train, we're like hurriedly going through like booking.com or whatever and trying to like rejig hotels and days and what we're doing where and all that. And long story short, we ended up staying a couple of extra days in Belgium. I was like, well, land of beer, chocolate and cheese.
An opportunity.
That's fine. I've not been, so yeah, it was nice. So we're drinking Westmalle Trappist stuff and delirium tremens, and
popped them both open.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about this. Like, I mean, I only really come to do the podcast to scam off Rich's good beer taste, really, Joe. Like, as in, yeah. So this probably yet another one where we kind of get a little bit lit up from the strength of the beer, but that's not a problem. Maybe. That's probably fine.
The good news is that what I've billed as like really exotic beer, you can just basically buy down the shops.
Yeah, but you know, it's exotically down the shops. Like, you know, it's not. You don't have to go to your local supermarket for it usually. So, but yeah, I mean, famously German trains are usually efficient, and now the humans are stopping them. Those bastards. So, yeah, I'm sorry that you didn't get to Germany or Cologne because it was really nice, but it sounds like you had a really good time in Belgium.
Yeah, no, it was, and like we will get to Germany at some point, kind of thing. But while I was away,
said the Russians in the 1940s or now. Anyway,
it's been a good couple of weeks since we had to cut an off-colour joke. But yeah, while I was away, got some lovely feedback about the podcast.
Oh, okay.
I mean, spoiler alert: this episode's going to be about critical thinking and high praise and all that kind of stuff. So starting with some nice feedback. Our good friend Jack got in touch. He said that the podcast is the perfect accompaniment to deep cleaning your George Foreman grill. So I hope you're enjoying this with whatever chores you have lined up.
I mean, that sounds like a 10 out of 10. I don't know, using the word perfect.
I want that quote on the side of a bus.
Yeah, wow, wouldn't you? Do you know?
Exactly, right?
I do love Jack. And I love the idea of him cleaning a George Foreman. That is in, I don't know, I feel like there's a TV show there that I could probably watch on QVC or something.
My personal favourite detail in all of it is not just cleaning, it's deep cleaning.
What have you been doing to the George Foreman?
Like, when was the last time you cleaned your George Foreman, Jack?
Feedback to Jack. Bad Foreman grilling.
What sandwiches have you been making?
Really, really grilled cheese. Oh, I'm jealous. Oh, I want a grilled cheese sandwich now. It's gone wrong. Have you ever watched Man vs. Food?
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes they have some incredible sandwiches just even on that show, and like the foot-long subs that have just got that are laced with everything. And I feel like that's like the thing I'd go for the most on Man vs. Food. I'd be like, I feel like I could tackle a massive sandwich, the most out of anything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that's fair. I mean, you see a couple of the things that he sits down with like a giant breakfast or something like that. It's like, well, in theory, sure. In practice, I would die. So
making for good television. Cool. So as Richard already alludes to, this week we're going to talk a little bit about, I guess, well, we called it in our heads Metacritical thinking, because we are actually going to be reviewing the top 2 games on Metacritic. I did it again!
Every time!
I'm not taking it out. Metacritic.com or for the PSP and the PS Vita. So we're going to be looking at God of War, Chains of Olympus, which is the first game that came to the PSP out of the God of War franchise, not the second one, which is Ghosts of Sparta. And that got us thinking a little bit, because actually that's usually reviewed worse, or this game is Chains of Olympus, than it is Ghosts of Sparta, but Metacritic has it at the top.
Other way around.
And for the PS Vita, we're going to be looking at...
It's Persona 4 Golden. So, Japanese RPG, JRPG, and this sort of mix of like life sim, social wrangles, and dungeon crawling, basically.
Yeah.
High school student by day, and by maybe afternoons and weekends. Supernatural warrior in an alternative dimension through a television. Pretty standard stuff.
Yeah, and they're very well reviewed, the Persona games, aren't they? I mean, one of the best reviewed games on the PSP was Persona 3.
Yeah, so they're a bit of a spin-off of another series called Shin Megami Tensei, and it's sort of like some people have kind of compared it to an almost like demonic Pokemon kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but it hits a little different. So yeah, I'll get. I mean, unless you want me to get into the nitty gritty now.
I mean, well, we can do. I guess that before you just do that, so we will go on to our general chat towards the end, which will be kind of talking about how you review a video game and what video game scores are all about, and is Metacritic, got it right that time, actually worth any of its salt? That is, in what, is it? Are these games the best PSP and PS Vita games of all time? Are they even close to that? Who's saying that? How is that even being considered? And I know you've got a couple of takes on that. So, but yeah, how about you fire off then? So go for Persona Golden 4. How much of it did you get done in a German boudoir? No, sorry, Belgian boudoir.
Not as much as I was hoping, because I was having fun on holiday. And I'm comfortable with that. And the main reason I'm comfortable with that is that I already had my save file of about 57 hours on it from back in the day. So I used to play it quite a lot when I was travelling to see my then girlfriend, now wife. And so I would have like a long time on sort of trains and coaches, because I'd be having to go from like between London and Shrewsbury and all sorts. So yeah, I've got a lot of time on it. However, because of some poorly signposted late game decisions and my own kind of maybe not weariness, kind of like when I've talked about Bloodborne before now. But there was definitely an element of kind of relief when I finished it. I did get an ending, but it was the bad ending because it was the one that presented itself. So I was like, yeah, I've got an out for this story. Cool. That feels like closure. Let's go. And so picking it back up again, I was able to replay that choice, and there's a lot of game still.
All right, okay.
And I haven't got anywhere near an ending.
Really?
Again, yeah. Like,
how did you get back into that choice then? Like, how does that work? Being 57 hours into a game and you've kind of got an ending.
Back in cold. Yeah. I could remember the choice that I made and failed, and I'm not going to say that it haunted me, but it was memorable enough that I knew what to ask Fiona to Google to make sure I got it right this time.
There's so much there to unpack. Like, Googling a choice that was bad, and, it reminds me of when I was 5 and I went out of the school gates to shake the paw of a dog and got told off. I had to go to the headmaster's office.
Really?
Yeah, no. Well, yeah. And, this is like 1993 or something. That is in, I think And on a serious note, I think Dunblane had just happened, and I think it was like a bit of a no. And but I literally went outside the gate, shook this dog's paw. I mean, that was an important. Why wouldn't I want to go shake your dog's paw?
Yeah.
Random dog outside. It left a mark on my coat. This paw, so it must have had a little bit of a dirty paw.
Yeah.
I kept that mark on my coat for probably about a week because I felt so bad about what I'd done. So there we go. That's a bad choice that I made that I want back, but. These things happen, and it sounds almost like a Persona 4 Golden experience of my own.
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar to a muddy paw print from a lingering memory. Yeah. So
that was self-indulgent.
It's a nice analogy because it is that sort of like, well, it happened. I feel a bit bad, but at the same time.
Yeah. I'm okay with it now. I'm at peace with that now.
Exactly.
It sounds like you are too.
And I was at peace with my bad ending.
Good.
So going back in and
Namaste.
And trying to pick it up. Well, not even trying to pick it up again. Like I was surprised at how quickly I got back into it. I was also surprised at how quickly it became apparent that I wasn't going to get very far without doing much more like grinding. Turns out I was comically underleveled for everything, and it falls into that classic JRPG trap of wanting you to like go back and redo things and do some level grinding and get stronger. And it's a weird one because you remember what I was talking about, Civilization Revolution?
Yes.
And I talked about how it was like had obviously been superseded by something else. Mm-hmm. At the time when I was playing it first time through, I really liked Persona 4 Golden. Mm-hmm. I did. There's a reason I spent 50 odd hours with it, right? Since then, I've played Persona 5, and Persona 5 is like the sort of tragically hip cousin of Persona 4 Golden, and like. The style, the approach, all of that is like amped up to 11 in Persona 5. And the soundtrack's a good example of it because like from sheer hours played, I've got a lot of the tracks from 4 burned into my memory. However, it was a track from Persona 5, or the anime of Persona 5 that I managed to sneak into my wedding. Like that's the scale of difference we're talking about here. So I do have a soft spot for 4. At the same time, like I wouldn't say that it's been superseded by 5. Like the two can coexist. So I mean, 4 was originally a PS2 game or something like that.
Yeah,
that got re-released.
I read this. Yeah, Golden was the remastered version.
Basically, yeah. And it kind of has its own vibe still. So like while Persona 5 is quite bombastic and you're in Tokyo and all this kind of stuff, in 4 it relies a lot more on like small town kind of creepiness and slightly more horror elements to it. You're trying to track down a serial killer that's chucking people into a TV so that the baddies on the other side can like murder them and blah 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 blah. Big high concept story grounded in like the kind of minuscule management of your time over the course of a school day and a year that you're in this town for. So it's got a lot of character, it's got a lot going on, and there's a reason why this kind of description of what happens in the game is so fucking scattershot, because there is a lot going on, and you don't necessarily have to. Well, you have to pick and choose. You don't necessarily have to do everything because you can't do everything, at least on one playthrough.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's designed to draw you in. It's designed to have you in this world for a long time. You've got relationships to build, things to learn about, and all this kind of stuff. So, when I picked it back up, the first thing that happened, and this was me on a train, in fact, was it on the Eurostar at the time? I might have been. So I had a clear couple of hours to sit and do nothing.
That sounds like, I'm just going to stop you there. It sounds so like you sound like the king of cool doing that right now, like playing Persona 4 Golden in your Hawaiian shirt on the Eurostar with your fancy beer. I just, like put that on like some sort of poster and I'd buy that. Yep.
So
stop sullied in your tracks there.
Yeah, well, I mean, A, top work on the tracks pun. Well done. B, yeah, I'd buy a poster of that. Yeah, I would. Yeah, it was that pause was me designing it in my head.
Yeah. Expect first copy by next week.
Dear doodle. So when I picked it back up again, and I'd made the right decision this time to like unlock what must be, I don't know, the final quarter, third of the game.
Wow.
Like, it's a significant chunk from what I've heard, and I use those words carefully because there's no fucking way that I was getting through all of it. Like,
yeah.
I've seen some people say that you can kind of complete the story in about 60 hours or something like that. No chance for me. I'm already like way past that, and it's just like I don't see an end in sight. And that's before you even get onto, I've maxed out this social link so I can go and do this extra thing now. When I got past that choice, I had to sit through a 40-minute cutscene before I could save it.
Wow.
And I remembered why it was a bit of a ball ache to play on public transport, because if you're trying to hop on and off of trains and you're in the middle of something like that, like, you are relying on the standby and resume function on the Vita, and therefore relying that you have enough battery to see it through, because if you start losing those saves and losing that progress...
I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I'm used to them, like, from, say, Metal Gear Solid or whatever. That isn't...
Yeah.
I'm not as ingrained in the culture with JRPGs and things as you are, and Japanese gaming in general, but you kind of get the crossover, like, from Konami games and things where they're very self-indulgent. But just to think that you've got a 60-hour game and there's a 40-hour cutscene, yeah, that would be hard to get that battery life out of it. A 40-minute cutscene, that's just like you say, just travelling around on a portable device is like very significant. You'd think they could probably just shorten that down when they remaster it.
Well, or at least make it easier to save, like, because these are fixed save points and things like that. So if you're going through a dungeon, you have to use a consumable item to leave the dungeon, to save it, to go back in, and stuff like that.
You're touching on so many points that I'm going to touch on about my game.
Yeah, but you're very restricted, I think, is my point. And not only that 40-minute cutscene was followed by a 30-minute cutscene. Because of the pivotal moment in the story that this was.
Yeah.
And, like, don't get me wrong, like, it was watchable. The story's engaging, the characters are interesting, and all that kind of stuff. Sure, the dialogue's a little clunky here and there, but, like, I've played worse. So, yeah, it's something of an acquired taste, I think is a fair way of putting it. At the same time, like, there's a lot of stuff to like about it with the combat. There's options for it. It's not just as simple as a sort of Final Fantasy style, taking it in turns to hit a thing. You've got wiggle room. You've got options to customize how you're approaching things and all that. There is a lot to like. Is it the best game on Vita, though? Like, it's got charm. It gives you interesting insights into, Japanese life. It's got some nice artwork. It's got some good style. It's no Persona 5. But you can't play Persona 5 on a Vita.
No.
You can play both of them, on, say, PC and stuff nowadays, so you can do a more of a like-for-like comparison. For me personally, like, Persona 4 Golden is up there. It's with the Vita's best. Is it the best? I don't think so.
93 out of 100 on Metacritic. So, I mean, we will come back to this, so we probably don't have to dig into this now, but that's just an idea that is,
that's where it is.
It's almost a perfect game on that website, which is widely used to kind of go, oh, would I pick that game up kind of thing. So, not to draw your conversation to a close too quickly or anything, but in terms of where you'd score it then out of 10 and therefore out of 100, that is in, where are you kind of thinking then? Because it sounds like you're not very positive about it, but I'm going to also, I guess, push you here a little bit. You kind of talking about an experience you had a years ago as well, where you're remembering some things about it, and you obviously have been playing on a save file, so it might be that you remembered it differently in things. I don't know, but maybe you don't.
Well, that's the thing. Like the hours that I've put into the game did not happen in the course of a week when I played it first time. We're talking probably a couple of years all in. I was umming and ahhing about what score to give it, because like part of me just wants to straight up give it a 9. Part of me wants to knock it down to an 8. It's in that region, and I think I'm gonna give it a 9.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that, I don't know about you, but in my head, these arbitrary numbers, which feel like they're becoming slightly more arbitrary, if anything, over time, like 10 out of 10 was never perfect. Like there's no such thing as a perfect game. Like 10 is like great, like awesome, almost life-changing. Persona 4, once upon a time, for me, would have been a 10 out of 10 game.
Right, okay.
It's not anymore. Persona 5 is.
Right,
and that's my problem.
Yeah.
Because like with Civilization Revolution and Revolution 2, when I was banging on about that, that's comparing apples and apples. Like they're very similar. It's a straight swap. One of them is just better.
Yeah.
Persona 4 and Persona 5, it's more like apples and oranges. Like there's enough different there that chances are I would happily assume that some people would really dislike one but quite like the other.
Okay.
So yeah, I think for me it's a 9. That said, like going back and looking at it, I did realize how much my tastes had changed. Like once upon a time, when I was playing this through originally, I probably wouldn't have given Wipeout 9 out of 10. Like that's the thing. It's kind. This is why it's kind of interesting to go back and like look at it with 2023 in mind. Yeah. So yeah, like 9 out of 10. But I think if you ask me again in another however many years, that's probably going to be nearer an 8.
But that's it though, isn't it? You respect different games at different parts of your life, what you've played on, how you feel about the how you connect with the story. It always,
the context matters.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, let's stop that right now, because we're going to talk about that in a little while. Just stop your shit, man, and just we'll come back to it. That's fine. Have you got anything else to say about Persona 4?
Probably, but I've already forgotten it. So
that's fine. Fair enough. This is why I brought notes for mine, because I have a lot to say about God of War, Chains of Olympus. And I'm basically going to read my notes verbatim. I'm not even for posterity, guys. I'm reading from what I've written down about it, and I'll try and make it into some sort of making sense of some kind, I guess, really. So it's from 2008. I guess for context, I've never played a God of War game.
Ever?
Never played a God of War game. Not for any reason. I think I just kind of missed them a little bit, because there was times where, even though I've owned a PlayStation 2 and a PlayStation 3 quite a lot in my life, and then PSP as well, I just never really picked them up. And it was kind of like when I owned the console. So, for example, I'd already traded in my PSP by the time that the first God of War game came out in 2008.
Right. So
I never played either of them. And I think similar sort of things happen with my home consoles as well. So it's not that I didn't want to. And therefore I was really excited when I thought, oh, actually, we're going to do this, where we're going to try and sort of, I guess, not a battle per se, but sort of the best game rated for the PS Vita versus the best game rated for the PSP on Metacritical. Oh no, I just scared the cat. Daisy. I just scared the cat. Sorry, Sunset. She's like, well, what is this? I went to a cattery for a week, it was chill, and now I've got a maniac shouting in the room again. That was all Kratos in me there. So, on that website, the website that shall not be named, shithouse.com. No, I bet that's a good website. So 2008, it's set as a prequel to the game series at the time. I'm unaware of that. Like, I don't really know what I actually
the lore.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know the lore, so therefore it doesn't really make any difference to me. So actually, I kind of get at the ground level. So if I want to play any further God of War games, that's probably a good thing for me in a way. That is in that I get to see that one first. But and the game, it just throws you straight into the action. You get like a tiny little bit of this is what Kratos is doing. He's chained to the gods. They are commanding him to do this. He doesn't want to do this because he's a bit of a dick, and he's just like, no, I do what I want. He's become the god of war at this point, and he basically is just throwing straight to the action, and he's preventing an invasion from the Persian army into Greece, and it's just full on straight away, a full on game straight away, and you go, wow, this is exciting. The buttons are kind of taught to you on the fly. There are hints, if you will, that you can turn on and off, which prompt you to do things. I've never experienced the quick time event sort of thing in the God of War franchise, so therefore I didn't know they existed, but they do. So when you're fighting mini bosses, if you will, or the bosses, then you'll fight them in a beat 'em up style, all the minions that are kicking about and also the bosses, but then also you get a sort of quick time event where it's like press this button, then press this button, and then make this happen to then defeat the boss. One thing that I found out was that one of those options that you use, so it'll say, oh, press circle to grapple with the boss, and then it'll be like, right, press triangle quickly, and it is very quick to be able to do that. Like, and it is a skill, and you're like, well, actually, fair enough. That, you know, like, that's fine. You have to actually be good at this. It doesn't give you much time to do it, which is okay until it asks you to swivel the analog stick in a left or right fashion. And when I say the analog stick, as Nathan alluded to on a previous episode, it's more of a nubbin, and it's
spin your nubbin.
And I cannot do that. That is, it is impossible. Like, it's too difficult to do in the time it gives you to do it. So when it came to those ones, those, like, I guess little mini bosses that you had to use the analog stick to finish off, I just had to finish them off using natural means, which was just swinging my chains. Yeah, just swinging my chains round and flailing around until they fucked off. So that was a little gripe I had with the game early out the gate, but the setting's really great. There's no loading screens pretty much the entire game.
That's impressive.
Which back in 2008 is amazing. Yeah. It's almost like it's a very linear on rails game where you flow from room to room. So you kind of just go, here's the next room, and you've got 3 enemies in here, and it'll throw up a set of demon gates, and you have to fight those enemies. And that it can be a bit of a grind, because, you know, that if you come up against a hard set of enemies, then fair enough that, you know, you're going to struggle in there, depending on how you were set up going into it, which I'll come back to later. But you know that, but you could do that room, and then you go to then you go to the next chamber, and then something might happen, and then you complete a level, and there'll be a cutscene, and it is just very on rails. You can't really go wrong. They do try and throw in a little bit of sort of like a few side rooms, but those side rooms are only ever to try and pick up more what I'd call magic orbs, really. Like, did they have them in God of War games? I don't know.
Oh, I've only ever... in fact, was it...
Someone's screaming now.
Almost,
to you idiots.
Was the second PSP one like Ghost of Sparta or something like that? I vaguely remember some... because I did play that one. I remember green orbs to, like, power up special moves or something like that. So
green was health in this. Blue was magic orbs. And red was to be able to fill up your weapons to get them to the next level to unlock other moves. That system is brilliant. Absolutely wonderful. That is fantastic even. And it's so quick and easy, and it's like, here's your 3 different colours of orbs. That's your health, that's your magic, and if you want to use your magic, then you need more orbs for that. And if you want to build your weapons up to make them more powerful, give you lots of different moves, that's great. The button mapping on this is sensational. Like, it uses a PSP. Obviously, apart from the one complaint I've got in terms of using an analog stick, apart from that one bit, the way that it uses what limited buttons you have on the PSP, obviously with losing 2 shoulder buttons, to be able to say, all right, so you use L1, or L even, sorry, there's only one L, the left button, and triangle to do this move, and then when you learn the next one, it might be L and circle. And it's great. It just utilises the PSP much more than any other game I've seen, in terms of every button has a use, and you can use it really easily. So one of my gripes with Tony Hawk's was that I found it really hard to use the PSP and the buttons for that. And then maybe other games like Battlefront, for example, where it's used the front face and things, and it was almost and you see games really struggling, and you could tell by sort of from 2006 to 2008, games had started to learn, and specifically this game really had done. So the button mapping, and it gets better and better through the game as well. So, and like I say, the orb system, brilliant. The only gripe I've got with that was that to pick those up sometimes, even after you kill a few enemies and you get some orbs for doing that, they have them in chests dotted around, I guess, what different rooms on your route through the game, and you have to hold the button, like hold the circle button, and you have to wait like 3 seconds just to open a generic chest every single time. It's almost like you probably could have saved like probably 25 minutes of real time just not opening these chests as slowly as Kratos. It's like, it's like Kratos, this absolutely hulking man. And he's just like taking ages to open up a chest for some health orbs. You're like, come on, dude, like, jog it in. Like, so again, another little thing where you just think that's just a complete waste of my time. But anyway,
is it like hiding a load screen or something? I wonder.
Yeah, I guess it must be, because you just think, the fact there are no load screens, that is almost
got to be doing something.
Is it? These chests, they're in all the right places as well. So you've got a boss coming up because there's a green chest and a blue chest. Whereas if you don't really have a boss coming up, there'll be a chest there, and this is a great mechanic. It'll glow green, and the next second it'll glow blue. So if you want to grab either type of orb, then you can do. And it changed the way that I game a little bit, because I'm so conservative in so much that I go into a boss fight thinking, I need full health, I need full health, I need full health. But in this game, it really matters if you think, well, actually, and you probably need to die a couple of times where you need to realise, no, did I need magic orbs during that? Did I need a really powerful attack? Because actually, did I need to do a better job of evading that boss and not getting hit, but actually dealing more powerful attacks? And you realise that. And then I think back to things where I've talked about Tekken and things before, where I'm like, right, and it's like, exactly, So I was like, right, okay, fair enough. You were all right, and I was wrong. But it did make a difference, and that came from that mechanic of having the choice of being able to pick up whatever you wanted. And I was like, that's great, really intuitive game to be able to do that. Well done, you.
Yeah, it's a nice little bit of strategy.
Yeah, it was. It's a bit samey, if I'm going to be honest. You kind of go through, you beat some grunts, you beat some mini bosses, you beat some bosses. It's a bit like, and then the only change in that is that beat 'em up style is where it tries to throw some puzzles in, and the puzzles are very clunky. They're like a shit Raccoon City police station. Like, it is just
slide
like,
this thing into this thing.
It is exactly that. Yeah, but probably even worse, to be honest. Like, you just think Kratos would just smash through a wall or some shit. He wouldn't be bothered about moving this statue or whatever. And there's one where it becomes overly complicated, where you have to move loads of statues and like fire beams of light across a room and things. And it's just like, but you've jumped up from a puzzle that was literally like, like open this door is the puzzle. Like, it was just stupid. It was so weird. So and then it builds into this idea where the story is probably minimal most of the way through, but it does start to get a bit more, I guess, specific to Kratos' backstory, and it does build on it in the last hour. It's about a 7-hour game, and you do get a bit more out of it, but before that, it does feel very samey until that point. You're like, what am I doing this for? And the last hour is good. And if you like your Gods of Wars and like games and stuff, that is in, I think that you'd really enjoy this. Like if that's your kind of style of game, like, I think you'll probably go, oh, well, that doesn't really matter to me. But I was like, well, I need to know a little bit more about Kratos because I've never played it before. So therefore, when I was kind of getting most of the way through the game, I was like, I don't feel like I know this character at all. That is in, it was a bit like, he's just kind of a bit of a grunt, and actually it seems like a bit of a dick to me, really. That is in, whereas I think people have probably played the games before think, there's a reason for this. But you do get that kind of backstory about his daughter Calliope, and the big bad in it is Persephone. Is that her name?
You asking me or telling me?
Yeah. So she is Hades' wife. And she's got a big beef, and she releases Atlas.
Got a big beef.
Sure, that is it. And she releases Atlas the Titan to take down the gods. yada yada yada. You end up in the land of Hades, which there's some cool things happen at the end. There is some cool things happen at the end, and they take your powers away, and you've got to effectively murder people that are already in the underworld to bring your powers back, and you have to make that choice. And you make the choice between you don't. The game's on rails, so you have to finish the game. You have to do that.
To murder the dead.
You do, yeah.
Right.
But Kratos makes that choice of being with Calliope, but everybody dying and then not existing anyway, or becoming a monster and saving the world to live in it again, but not being able to be with his daughter, which is quite an interesting sort of, it was fun to sort of considering that, and slaying people just to get your powers back. You're like, I've earned these, you shithouses. So but then you get to the last boss. Two things: save points, like I said previously when you were reviewing, these are fixed save points. They're quite annoying. And there was a couple of times where, and I even texted you about it in the game, where I got kind of stuck and it wasn't obvious where I needed to go. And I'm not blaming the game necessarily for not making it obvious, but you had to go back down a lift and back past, and you were like, I don't remember where I'm going here, and that's ridiculous that you expect me to have to go back that way. I thought the game had actually broke. I thought my save had broke, and I was really angry about it, but then I worked out in the end. But it wasn't obvious. So they were a bit annoying. If I'm going to be honest, you do miss the autosave. This would be a game that would really benefit from autosaving as you go through the game. So then you get a save point just before the final boss. You go up a flight of stairs and there is a 2-minute FMV, and then you fight the last boss. Last boss, very difficult. You die a few times, as you're expected to, because then you learn their pattern of attack and you become better. Go back to your save point. You've got to watch the video again, haven't you? You've got to watch the video again. Why? Why can you not skip that video? It is insane. So the amount of times I had to watch that starting video, it's not, nothing happens in it. It's just the setup of the battle, and it's really annoying because it's just like, why can you not skip that?
Maybe it's hiding a load screen.
Yeah,
in all seriousness.
Well, it must well be. I mean, it really must be. But that is annoying. Would you rather a load screen? I don't know. I get it, but
I mean, I think I would. If it's an unskippable video versus a loading screen, in a situation like that, I'd take the loading screen.
Well, that's it. You kind of I don't think you need to see him swooping in again and again, and so I mean, I'm gonna go from a positive. I've got a positive. Back Civ Rev 2, and I feel like we can mention this because, as Fiona mentioned at the time, Civ Rev 2, bad boob graphics. God of War, excellent boob graphics.
Okay,
I say that
as a connoisseur.
Yeah, no, but that is from the point of view. So, very much spooned into the very first, the very first part of the game. Right. There are two sirens, if you will, who lure you in for this mini game of sexual intercourse where you press buttons to have off screen. I don't know the benefits of this. I don't think you got anything. I thought you'd maybe get a magical orb from it or something like that. Or so you get, nothing. Nothing happened. And I was like, it just kind of alluded to sex happening off the screen.
Right.
But these sirens did have their boobs out, and the graphics were excellent comparative to what was shown from Civ Rev 2 on the PS Vita. I was like, that Fiona was right to bring that up and say actually they were poor.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought I would bring that up because it felt important.
That's fair, because on Civ Rev 2, it did look like 2 scoops of ice cream nailed to a plank of wood. Kind of thing.
So anyway, so it felt weird. I feel like Fiona needs to be in the room for that. Anyway.
My parents are listening to this podcast now, by the way. So, hi, Mum and Dad.
Yeah, I know. Hi, thank you for the lovely feedback. We are like Holly and Phil. Broken on the inside. So, positives. The sound, great music. And in terms of, I guess, the battle, it feels really all-encompassing. Mm-hmm. And for such a small handheld console, you get a really good vibe out of it. You feel like you're playing an epic game, which is great.
That's impressive.
I mean? It really is. Puzzles were... Oh no, sorry, I've got them on negatives because I have their shit. So controls, like the button mapping, great. The basic story progression, all spot on. the difficulty, you go from thinking, you know, I even made a note where I was like, this isn't difficult, you know, or normal. No, not easy, fuck off. But it's tough in all the right places. And as I expect in a game like this, where it kind of, I don't know what kind of game it is really, because you kind of get that beat 'em up element, and then you kind of get that almost a bit like a mini dungeon crawl, but not really. Like, as in, like it's a weird game.
Does it end up in that kind of action adventure section of the shop that's half the shop?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's very nondescript, but it is tough in all the right places. You know when you are going to have to play a boss a few times to learn it, and you're fine with dying. So they're all the positives. Negatives: mini games and puzzles were terrible. The general grunt fighting is just kind of a bit of a grind sometimes, where you're just kind of going through the same people over and over, but I get why that's happening. I've got this in a weird sort of camp, which is the linearity of the game, which I was really happy that it was on rails, and I love the flow from room to room, and I love the fact it didn't really load, but it is just very linear. Like, you've got no opportunity at all to go and find anything else out that you want to do. As I've previously alluded on the podcast, I'm quite fine with that, but this felt very rote. That is, and it was almost like you just couldn't do anything else at all. And the idea of a side room was, oh, it's a different room. Oh, there's a chest in here with some orbs in it. It wasn't there was nothing else there, really. So, you know, it's kind of like one of the funny ones where it's like, it could be a positive, it could be a negative for you, depending on who you are. And I wanted to say that, really.
No, that's fair. I mean, because Persona was similar, because it literally works on a calendar as well. So it feels railroady, but at the same time, you do have a bit of wiggle room. So I do see where you're coming from.
So yeah, they were kind of my points on it, really. So I'm aware I've talked about it quite a lot. Is it the best game on the PSP? It's not my favourite game by a stretch, but I can understand why a lot of the concepts in there are, and you could tell that it was a PSP game that had been developed 4 years into the PSP's lifespan, and it was almost like, and I guess that from what I've seen of the Ghost of Sparta, and obviously you said you've played it, that is meant to be a more accomplished game even than this as well.
Yeah, I think sort of, at least from a technical point of view,
yeah,
I can definitely see where the extra sort of time went in and what they'd learned and things like that.
Yeah. So yeah, there was some stuff in this that I was really impressed with for a game, and the game length as well. That just felt. So I had this thing in my head when I was walking over here thinking about it, and I really like swimming underwater. Now, that sounds a bit weird, and it is, and I don't give a shit. But the very first, if I go for a swim, the very first length I'll swim, I'll do the first part, I'll do it underwater as best I possibly can. Right. So I'm talking 25 metres, and I'll probably get about 20 metres in, and I'm loving it, and I'm thinking, I love swimming underwater, I love swimming towards the bottom of the pool, and I'm just like, you know, like that feeling, I feel really free when I'm doing that. But I get to the last 5 metres, and I start to get that dread feeling where I'm like, I need to get up to breathe. I'm not making it to the end of the pool, I need to get up to breathe. And this game felt the same sort of way, in so much that it was like, I felt like I was really enjoying it, and I felt really quite like sort of immersed in it, and it felt like a really nice feeling flowing over me, but I did feel like I wanted to get out by the end. The last sort of hour and a half, I was like, I feel like I'm just grinding here.
Yeah, I'm kind of done now.
Yeah, I'm like, and it's
that's
like...
That's a really good way of putting it, you know?
It's just, I needed out. And that's what you were sort of saying, I guess, about
with Persona,
but obviously 10 times the amount of hours on as well.
It was quite a long time to hold your breath.
So yeah, I guess. So if I'm scoring this, it's an 8. It's an 8, yeah. So it's not as good, I don't think, as is made out by the website that shall not be named. But it is a very good game, but it does have some things in there that I was like, you know, these are genuine gripes, and I don't think I'm wrong in saying that these would annoy most people. But yeah, generally, I thought it was quite a good game, and one of the better ones I played on the PSP.
So while we're sort of swinging round to Metacritic, it seems to me like both the games that we've reviewed, like, while they might not be our personal favourites, there's enough there that we can definitely see the quality, and we can see why people would have it as their favourite game on the system. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to be wrong, so no. Yeah, I get that, and like you say, it's weird, isn't it? Because when you come to reviewing games, if you just get a vibe and a feel for something, and it's like, look, this is my jam, you'll bat for it. You'll bat for it, and you'll go like, this is, and everybody, you'll say it's 99 or 100. Do you know what I mean? It is the perfect game, but fine well it isn't. But you push it. Everybody pushes an opinion to the point where it's like, look, I need you to believe me about this, so therefore I'm going to go to the nth degree about it. So therefore you can see how if someone's like, oh, I love this type of game, like in either of these circumstances, then you'll say it's like, it's 99 out of 100. But, in your heart of hearts, it probably isn't. So it kind of is skewed. And obviously it will be at the other end as well. Like, although looking at the games that we've talked about where we've been like, Ridge Racer and The Sims and maybe even Call of Duty, for example, that we've looked at, we're not saying it to jump on them. I don't think. I think we're trying to have a genuine opinion where we say that they are really poor games, but some people might just say, "Oh well, this is shit because because this is funny about it," and I'm going to give it a 1, and it's like, "Oh, none," and it's like, "Come on, man." Do you know what I mean? Like even the worst games have probably got something about them.
I'm really glad you've mentioned that, because that, in a nutshell, is kind of my issue with Metacritic as a platform, I guess. Like, where you've got a load of critics who put a lot of time and effort, or some, or in our case, barely any time and effort into.
Hey, we've put 45 minutes into this. Come on now.
Yeah, that's true. Into playing these games and forming an opinion, and then all of that is kind of distilled to, say, a sentence or two quote and a number, which means there's a lot of nuance that just instantly, and I mean instantly, gets erased from that equation. But then you've got the user figures as well, where, from the bits and bobs I've seen, Persona 4 Golden included, because I had a quick look, there will be things like, oh, well, if you want to go and play a game where you can try and go on a date with girls, then you can play that, but it's not for me, 0. And it's like, fuck off, man. Like, that's
just part of the game.
Exactly.
It's not like
it's not exactly a holistic view you've got there, you fucking numpity.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Numpty.
Numpty. I thought you said nuppity, and I was like,
I think I did.
Yeah, okay, that's
strong
fine.
Beer. Numpty.
Speaking Belgian. Speaking of which, actually, if we're going to review the beers, the Westmaler, lovely, but I'm fine. Do you know what I mean? The Delirium, even though I'm not necessarily, this is a blonde beer, I'm well into this compared to...
The Delirium's great.
Yeah, that is fucking brilliant. I feel deliriously happy.
Yeah, they had like a little alleyway in Brussels that was like the tap room and a tequila place and a food place and a bunch of bits and bobs. So
sounds great.
Well done, Delirium.
Yeah, no. Kudos.
Westmaler and you Trappist monks, it's good, but there's room for improvement. I feel.
Come on. Like, as in, I'm gonna have to score Delirium 99 out of 100 just to get people to be like, yeah, drink it.
So this is the thing, right? Like, I am not a brewer. So, like,
what?
Who gives a shit, really? Like, what I think about this. And I think, like, that's the other thing about, reviewing games and things like that. Like, ultimately, like, it's going to be a subjective opinion. And I don't buy for a second when people are trying to be objective about it. And it just... I always find that I gel better with video game critics online who are upfront about their opinions, and like you were saying earlier about, like, well, I know I like it and I know what I like and I like this, because you can start to find people who have similar tastes.
Yeah.
And if they recommend it, it's like, actually, I'm probably going to get something out of that. Whereas if this other person recommends it, it might not quite be for me. Whereas the people that are trying to approach it objectively, I think, stumble into a bit of a dangerous area, especially when you say get review code sent to you by a publisher or something like that. It's like, well, is there any pressure to kind of be a bit more positive about it and stuff like that? And I've seen some review scales that are like 1 to 5 are just bad.
Yeah.
It's like, well, in that case, why not just have 1 and start there and just have your scale go up to 5 rather than go all the way to 10
Get rid of those
when you're
numbers,
not using half of the scale. You know, like it's that Spinal Tap problem, but in reverse.
So interesting you should say that. Then I got 2 points about that. One is the video that you sent me from GameSpot, was it?
GameSpot, yeah, it was the Kurt Locker.
Yeah,
series.
the Kurt Locker. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I just wanted to point, I guess, drop on the point you just made, where it's like the MCU being reviewed by Empire Magazine, and it always just gets given 4 stars. Like, as in, and everybody takes a piss about it now, and it's like, and you just feel like they're kind of like in that spot where they, like, even if a film's not wonderful, they'll be like, oh yeah, but we have to speak to the directors and the actors, and we're invested in it now, and we're genuine fans as well, so we've kind of got to prop it up a little bit. And it's like, but you'll sort of see it and go, well, I kind of disagree with that. But then they're entitled to their own opinions as well. But then it just feels like unvaried what they say about it as well. And it's almost like you kind of get to the point like, well, what are you saying? Is it actually true? That isn't it. Do I feel like I trust your journalism because it has become this singular sort of thing? I'm not so negative to say that, but that isn't. I still think that they are trying to be good journalists about it. But I can see why the scoring, if you will, the thing that people look at immediately and go, how many stars have you given this? That's the very first thing you go to. That is in. It's so emotive, and it's almost like, well, actually you need to read all of the review that's in there first, don't you, to actually understand what bits of it are good and what bits of it actually are drawbacks. And this is what the Kurt Locker video was saying, wasn't it?
And it was really interesting because, like, I'm big enough and ugly enough to know when someone has made a point I was going to make but better. And
so maybe we should refer people to that.
I was going to say I would definitely encourage anybody listening to go and find this video. I can't remember the exact title, but it's basically like why we should be playing more games that are rated 6 out of 10.
Yeah. If you just type in Kurt Locker 6/10, it'll probably pop definitely up. Come up.
And it kind of harkens to exactly what you were just saying about people just skipping to the score. And especially on some of the bigger review websites, I get the impression that at least once upon a time, and from how recent this video was, I assume it's still the case, that by and large, a lot of people online take anything lower than a 7 out of 10 as like bad, or not worth my time and things like that, which is not true. Like it's not, because like you said earlier, there's plenty of things that are good in these games that aren't necessarily great. There are bits in that Ridge Racer game that I gave 2 out of 10. Like, I like bits of that game.
You went full Samwise Gamgee there, where you were like, there is still good in this world. There is good.
2 out of 10 games. There is good.
That is the highlight of the podcast so far for me. Yeah, what he said just spoke to me so much, because I almost think that looking at those numbers as well, when you say 7 out of 10 and above, like you wouldn't buy anything less than that. But you think is that the human brain going, well, that's the top third percentile, that's the middle, and that's the bottom, and it's almost like you would never touch anything lower than a 3. Why would you do that to yourself? But then the middle ground seems to almost like get lost as well in that, and it's like you shouldn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly, and I think you're hitting on a point there where it is human nature to be like, okay, well, the positive thing, great, let's go for that. I think as an added wrinkle to that, nowadays, especially where like everything gets patches, and just because it's shite at launch doesn't necessarily mean that a year hence it will still be shite. And I think we're going to get to the stage where we're going to have to like re-review stuff. And at least with us doing these, like no one's releasing any more patches for these games as far as I'm aware. Like they're done now. They're set in stone. Yeah. At least on these platforms. So
Persona 7 golden, silver golden.
I think Persona 4 Golden came out on Switch like 4 months ago or something like that. Like it's still alive. And it's that sort of thing where at launch, I think there is a tendency nowadays to be less inclined to pre-order a game because it's more of a gamble.
Yeah.
And I think if you leave it until some reviews come out and then you see that it's got a 7, you're like, okay, cool, let's go. You might be thinking of pre-ordering something, it comes out, it gets a 5 or it gets lower. And I could see why you might think, okay, cool, I'm going to sit tight, I'm going to wait, I'm going to give it a couple of months, I'm going to give it a year, however long, wait for a sale, wait for it to grow, develop, see if it gets any better. And so, like, I think just taking a snap judgment from the number on its own is a bad idea. However, I can see why people do it in order to try and make what they see as a savvy consumer decision. But I think there is a tendency to make that decision a bit too rashly and jump to a conclusion.
I mean, we are giving the arbitrary numbers.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about that as a podcast? Because I like the idea that we're putting a value on something, but only because I feel like I'm trusting what I'm saying about that.
Yeah.
But then but aren't other people doing that?
Well, that's the thing. And this, to go sort of, I guess, full circle, like, that's why I'm comfortable with it. Initially, when we were talking about doing this, I initially
you didn't want to
give the numbers. I just wanted it to be that kind of, well, here's what I think of it, and leave it at that. However, I have grown comfortable with it because I like to think that I've been so upfront about how biased I am about some of these things. And, like, there will be things that I like more than other things. No one's paying us to make these reviews. Like, this is our own money that we've spent.
Pay us, people.
I will add more points to the Ridge Racer review.
Get George Foreman to pay us the money.
But, like, it's the sort of thing that, like, I feel comfortable doing it because I would like to think that if in however many months, years time, some poor soul stumbles upon this and is like, hey, my views are broadly in line with what these guys are saying.
Poor Souls 3.
Yeah. But, like, gets a good recommendation off the back of that, then I'll be happy. Yeah. Like, that's the trick. If someone has listened to any of this and gone, you know what, like, sure, I might not have a Vita, I might not have a PSP, but I have heard about this game, or I know of something similar, or the way you've spoke about this has made me think I might go and have a look at that other thing that you mentioned in passing. Or, if that lands with anyone in any way, shape or form, then that's job done. And if sticking an arbitrary number on it so that I've got a mental scale of what I like and what I don't like means that I can make that clearer for people, I get that.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, if we suddenly started reviewing new releases, that's where we'd come unstuck.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that you're right that it's that there's a system, and everybody uses this system. Like the score, everyone scores games out of 10. And that's just generally what happens. And there's no reason why that is a bad thing to happen. It's just that sometimes you kind of come across things where people just dig in for just that score, and it's like, if you spread the reviews a little bit more or listen to what the person's actually saying. The thing that came to mind out of nowhere was this game that I played on the PlayStation 2 called Eve of Extinction. And you kind of like, I think you're a cop, and this is going to be a really bad memory here. I think you're a cop, and you kind of have like a lightsaber baton almost. That was the most 6 out of 10 game that I've ever played. And I fucking loved that game. It just, I had some, and Betty, who we're going to see this weekend at Slam Dunk, I remember he will always speak about that game, almost like, oh, remember that game? Yeah, it was definitely a 6 out of 10, but we remember it.
Yeah.
And we loved it. And it's almost like that's that's not a bad thing. It's a great thing to feel. Like, you've kind of made a connection with something that just wasn't perfect.
Yeah. I mean, even
like all humans.
Exactly. And like even that Ridge Racer game that I gave 2 out of 10 to, like, I forever and a day will have a connection to that as being like, oh, so much missed potential. And like, but I've got that connection with it now. And
it's like Reading Football Club.
Absolutely. Reading till I die. Which will probably be quite soon if their form is anything to go by. But it's the sort of thing that having that connection matters, and understanding that even a game, even if it's terrible, there will be potentially something about it that you can latch onto, or like you might play it with a friend, and you have a cracking time laughing at this game. And so the memory is not of the game itself, it's of the context of the situation and things like that. All of that shit matters and it all counts. And if you're just zeroing in on the scores, you're going to lose all that. And that's why, like, doing the scores the way we do and never having them in the same place in the podcast means a lot to me, because it means no one's going to skip to 10 minutes in and know what we're giving it as a number. Or
and we'll never put it in the detail
it's
of the
never
podcast.
In the
Exactly, yeah. Can we find, as if there's enough people listen to this shit to even care about that. Like,
yeah, exactly. Hello to both of you.
Yeah, no, bookmark it, yeah. So I guess that's it, really, for this week. So, do you want to tease next week a little bit? Because I feel I'm really excited about. We're not even
what might happen.
What might happen?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, I have recently picked up Guitar Hero, and I love having Guitar Hero back in my life. The guitar is not as responsive as it once was. I feel like somebody has played the shit out of this guitar, but it kind of holds up. And I'm going to be honest, it's probably more the game. So if you jump to Guitar Hero World Tour, which is the fourth one, that seems more responsive, as would be judged by my 251 out of 252 notes struck on the middle.
Nice.
By Jimmy Eastwell.
Good work.
But yeah, it kind of inspired us a little bit. Not that necessarily, but we were talking about, we're going to go to Slam Dunk this weekend. Yep. So that is a alt rock punk festival.
Bill it like rock punk and emo or something like that? Alternative punk and emo.
Have you been before?
I haven't.
No,
but I should have. Like on paper, it's something that I'd love.
I think you probably should have. Yeah. So me and Betty were spoke about the pod just before. We've been a couple of times, and it was in Leeds City Centre at the time, and we absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. Now the vibe in Leeds City Centre was completely different, because it was like you could just bob out the site, if you will, air quotes here, and go into Wetherspoons and get drunk, or go to Morrison's, and we sat outside the grass of Morrison's just getting an absolute shit face, and then we go into the underground car park of Leeds Met University to listen to an Ennett Shikari DJ set. With like 30 people.
Was that the Rose Bowl or something?
Yeah, the Rose Bowl. Like 30 people in the shitty old like car park, like just raving away to like these guys on the decks. It was brilliant. It was really good. I remember seeing Sponge in a car park, but you could go in the O2 Academy in Leeds, and then there's also Leeds Arena, where I first sort of saw, I guess, Real Big Fish and fell in love with them. And yeah, so there's a lot of eclectic feel, and there's going to be a lot of love and vibes from us for that, because that's kind of one of those things that we sort of connect on as well. So we're really looking forward to that. Now it's up at Temple Newsome, and we've not been to. Sorry, obviously this has not been before, but I've not been to the new site yet, so we'll see what that's like. It might be a bit more festivally, but we're going to go to that next weekend, and we're hoping to do a few, I guess, live bits, really, aren't we? To sort of like add to the podcast next week.
Yeah. We'll have some chats with people, because we'll be with friends and all that. So yeah, when we've got some downtime, we'll see if we can record some of it. No promises.
I know.
For the obvious reasons.
We're gonna get shit faced.
But in theory, we will try and collar a few people to have some chats and see if we can cobble it all together on the fly.
I think that one of the things, coming back full circle and start the conversation, was that we want to try and get to is best accessories for game consoles, such as Guitar Hero. So that'd be really cool if we can get to that. If we manage to do it, great. If not, you're going to have a really just hungover general pod on the Monday instead, which would be worse. So hope for us out there, guys. So yeah, have a lovely week, and we will see you on the other side of it.
Catch you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.